Welcome back to Granja Caimito in the Pedroche Valley of Andalusia, Spain. Last time I had to cut the video a bit short because it was getting way too long. We were exploring the back parts of the altiplano where we haven't worked just yet. This time I continue this. There is also a look across the fence to the east to a part which you haven't seen just yet. And then there's also the topic of old wood on the ground. In temperate climates, that is a very good idea, but in the Mediterranean climate, it actually can become a fire hazard. I will show you a very good example of that. Let's continue our exploration now. And I really have to say that this area here has a very, very nice forest feeling to it. Can hear some birds. There's quite a bit of shade, and Mother Nature has planted those new trees on contour. You can clearly see this, and the grown-ups are also on contour, and there is the slope. It was just a few steps from the last location, and I wanted to show you this forest feeling. Our cows have been here maybe 2 times by now, so not frequently, but we do get a lot of other visitors. This is from some wild boar who was looking for acorns. You can find this in many areas, but it's not that intense as we are putting 50 pigs here in this area. Then there would be bare ground by now. But you can see what probably 2 wild boars can also do. So they root it up, eat the acorns, and then they leave, and they won't come back in a long time, which is why this intervention is not bad at all. It actually helps, because there's a disruption, and then nature will fill this void by letting other things germinate. So that's basically the model that we need to follow. And that is also our intention with those 5,000 square meter paddocks. We let the pigs in, let them destroy everything up to a certain point, like this, and then we let this area repair itself, or we help by seeding. So that way we use the pigs in between cropping. And I think that is then a much more sustainable model. And we don't spend diesel fuel, we don't have an engine to maintain, but instead get delicious ham on top of all that. I think that's a pretty smart way to do this. And I believe it is the way that people in the past have been doing for a long time. So we're not inventing anything, but maybe rediscovering. So here there is another sign of wild boars. And if I now raise the camera and pan, I hope the image improves. Yes, it does. So here am I at the edge of our altiplano, and you can see it goes downhill here. The place where I just have been is to the left, and this is a place where we do have a lot of natural flowers. Actually, they're a little bit more to the right, and I'm panning left now. So this is the edge of the altiplano. That is what I want to show you. And to the right, downhill, is where our third shallow well is. The one that is next to another temporary creek. And we have not used it yet, but we know that even in the height of summer there is water in it. But of course we have never pumped anything out of it. So I cannot really say whether this can be used during summer. But it doesn't really matter, it's just another well. And our intention is to have a pump in each. And during winter, when there is a lot of water, pump it out and store it somewhere up here into a future big holding tank. At least that's the plan, but whether we will actually implement it, that remains to be seen. Depends on the need. But we could. So I will now walk a little bit further in that direction and show you more from there. There's something else that I should also mention. I just did a few steps in the direction that I said I was going to, and you can see there is a lot more signs of wild boar activity. And the reason why I'm showing you this is the topic of biosecurity. So here in this area there is much more activity because there is less activity by humans, and because the cows are not frequently here, the wild boars come in. And that is also why the neighbor on the east side was asking about collaboration to fix the fence. He has this idea to keep the wild boars out. And yes, I can understand that. But I made a community post now a little while ago when this video comes up. And we have to think about how we manage and handle that. Because we don't want any viruses be transmitted from wildlife to our livestock, because that's then a problem. Think about tuberculosis. And also these wild pigs, those wild boars, they may also be infected with something. I know from Germany that there's a huge problem with African swine pest that affects the domesticated pigs, and it is apparently transmitted from wild boars. So I'm not sure how exactly we want to handle that, but we might find a way to establish a wildlife zone as a buffer between our own land, where we keep the animals, and everybody around. And we might also provide food there on purpose, so that the wildlife has a reason to stay there and not try to come into our managed area. That is something that we might be doing here in the north of our strip of land. So you can't really see this now because of the trees that are right in front of me, but there ahead the terrain goes down and then it comes up again, and the part that comes up again is still ours, and then there is a fence that separates us from the next autonomous region, which is called Castilla-La Mancha. So there we better carry a passport, and that might be an area where we can introduce a wildlife buffer. But of course that would be something better be done in collaboration with the neighbors left and right, because our land there is maybe 300 meters wide, and that does not have a huge effect. And after all, there is also a fence, and on the other end, and on the other end, so up there in Castilla-La Mancha, I cannot simply walk over there just yet. It's a little bit too difficult, but it is pretty open there. So when there is wildlife, it is on our side, and left and right. There probably will be a video in the future where you can see this And I think, yes, a while ago I made a video when I was walking in this area, so you may want to look for it. It was also a video in autumn or winter, so there you have a little bit of an idea in which months this video might have come out, or has come out. It has. Definitely it is there. So I will now go a little bit further ahead. And I can already see in the distance the fence that separates us from the neighbor in the east. I hope it does not shake too much. So I guess that is enough. So you see the vegetation here is different. Around this tree there are a number of young oak trees. So this one here is a young oak, while this is something else. And there is also something else. So there is a number of things here. I'm not trying to pretend that I know a lot about those plants. We also found a number of aromatic plants in this area here that are used in the Mediterranean cuisine. So we should have a good look at what we have and make sure that it stays. So this here is the edge, and our fence line will then probably end where, or be where these plants begin, so that we have them excluded for now. And excluded means protected until we have figured out a little bit more. See, that's the thing. This is a little bit complex. Also, when you look at the map, you would say, you put a fence there, there and there, and then that's it. Yeah, based on topography you can do this, but the reality on the ground is another, and I rather understand what is growing where already, instead of creating an artificial system. Sometimes that stuff is also lying around. This is from a shotgun. When I see, I try to collect them. And see, here there are more young oak trees. So this again is a place that is asking for proper management, so that this can grow. So might be another area for beehives, because there are quite a few, and even along the fence. They do exist. Now that I'm at the fence, so let's look across the fence. So what you see down there, besides that there is a clear sign of erosion, you can see it there. This is an area where not much has happened. That is the place where there is a tenant running some sheep, but of course not in a holistic management way, or rotational grazing, or managed grazing, however you want to call it. The sheep just go wherever they want to, and grasses then grow or don't. So this is how it looks like. And again, whenever I say something like what I just said, it is not to attack someone or this, whatever someone is doing. It's just an observation. Because if you look here, this area needs some human intervention in order to strive. And apparently the human intervention in the past, letting the animals roam freely, has not been good to this land. So I can only compare what we do and the results that we have and what I see left and right. And therefore I draw the conclusion that the idea of rotating, which is not new at all, apparently is doing good to the land. And here in this area the animals are mostly absent. So apparently animals are important. But then what do I know? So in order to show you the rest, I'm now standing next to the fence in the east, and when I pan to the right, you see the area that we are going to work on next. So along the trees that you see here at the edge, before to the right the area with the new plants begins, there we want to establish a fence line so that we can work with the cows in the area to the left. That is probably 2 hectares in total. I guess the whole altiplano might be 3. And you see there aren't that many trees. One has toppled recently, and you see the remnants of it. And yes, we will put this to use, but we need to get the chipper here in order to make some wood chips out of it. That is the plan. It will happen sometime in the future when the guy has time and is nearby. And eventually we will have smaller paddocks here, the usual 5,000 square meter size. But for now this will be one big area with a fence in the middle to have it somehow manageable. And of course it's good to have it large, because as you can see, I will walk a little bit there and show you the ground. Despite all the rest this area got, it is mostly stones, and when I now pan down you see there's some moss and not much else. There are some greener patches, but even this is not really grass as forage. So we need to bring in stuff, and that is what this fencing project will then allow us to do. There are patches that look a little bit better, like this one here. And there are some forage plants. That leafy stuff is forage. But it's only much better around the wood. Of course, this used to be, not long ago, a living oak tree. And up there it is much better than in this very, very open area here. And this is also a slope, so the water has also been flowing in that direction and then away onto the neighbor's land. So this is our next job here, to put up the fencing so that we can manage things. Someone was mentioning to put wood in some areas so that it rots and also helps with erosion and all that. So this might be interesting for you to see. This is some wood that was left here. We did not place it. And let me come a little bit closer with the camera and show you something what happens if you do this in this area. You can clearly see that this has been slowly smoldering away, so it has been burning. That happens during summer. So when you leave some dry wood out there it might become fuel for a fire. So something that works well elsewhere might become an issue in this area. Let me take you over to the other one. It is much more prominent to see that you can clearly see this is charred. So this is not rotting away, it is burning. And if it finds more, then we have a wildfire. So we need to be careful with those things in order not to set everything on fire by trying to attract fungi. Of course, if the whole area were more moist during summer, then it would be different, but it isn't. When there is 5 to 6 months without rain or significant rain, and temperatures in the shade as high as 45 degrees, then you can imagine how hot it is in the direct sun, like it is right here, because there is no shade in this whole area. So if I step back, you see, there's a tree. There where this wood is laying, there's nothing. And there's another tree. And I am kind of south of this, and there is no tree either. So this is completely exposed to the summer sun, and that is why this has been smoldering. So thankfully there was no dry old hay around it, but that could have been a fire. So we need to think a little bit different about wood on the ground. So not everywhere we can really do this. There are some patches of real grass up here, like this one here. It gets a lot of shade because the canopy here is much more closed than elsewhere, and the trees are shading the sun when it's high in the south, and that is. And also the irrigation that they receive from condensation, that is why this area is much more lush and has some actual grass. That is it for today. I hope you enjoyed walking around with me in the new parts of our altiplano where we haven't worked yet. And I hope you come back in a few days for another episode. I leave you with a few nice pictures, and until then, take care.